Have you ever noticed that when you start healing or you get over something or you glow up, you feel like a whole new person? I can tell you why. But first, hi, my name's Kinsey. I am a trauma-informed life coach. Over here, we learn trauma, we heal from relationships, and everything in between. So if that resonates with you, please stick around. I would love to have you on our journey. Other than that, let's jump into it. I'm going to drop some truth on you right now that might shock you. Majority of your personality traits are not actually your personality traits. I know, crazy. Even the ones you really think are your personality traits probably aren't. They're things that you learned when you were very, very, very young in order to survive your surroundings. And I don't mean like survive like you were in a near-death situation, but your nervous system is always trying to help you survive. So if you're a people pleaser now, you were probably trying to avoid conflict in your house as a kid. Childhood. The first 7 years of your life are the most important. And I say this in almost every video, but that is when your brain is absorbing everything and forming your beliefs and your thought patterns. Your brain is a sponge in that time. So when you're seeing things, witnessing things, learning things, absorbing things, like if you're learning, you can't trust anyone in your life before you're 7, like if you have unreliable parents or parents who aren't truthful, you're going to grow up to be hyper independent. So that personality trait isn't rooted in you, you learned it, which means you can unlearn it. If you before, the age of 7 or as a young child learned that unconditional love wasn't something you were deserving of, then you're probably an overachiever or attention seeking or always trying to stand out or trying to break your back to helping others. If you're super shy, it probably wasn't safe to be heard at home. You probably weren't allowed to have an opinion. If you have anger problems, this is a deep one. Let's go deep on this one for a second. So if you have anger problems, there are 2 routes that this one usually can go in. 1, anger worked for you as a child. That's when you finally got to be seen. That's when you finally got to be heard. That worked. You finally got your parents' attention when you were angry and yelling and throwing things. You threw a fit and then you finally got someone to pay attention to you because nobody ever paid attention to you otherwise. So when you learned that at a really young age, you grew up to know, hey, anger works. Anger's good. Anger gets me what I want. Now, on the flip side, on the contrary, if you showed anger at a young age and you learned it was really bad, you got punished, it made your parents really angry at you, anger was awful, or if you've seen, your alcoholic dad get really angry and really mean and you saw what it can do at a really young age, then you can grow up to suppress your anger and bottle it up, and that turns to depression. You hide your anger, you shut down in conflict. So anger is a really dangerous one. It can go either way. A lot of our, quirks or our flaws or, anything like that, they're just coping mechanisms that we picked up when we were super, super young. They're not who we actually are. Everyone's personality traits, that's not who they are. You see somebody doing something weird, it's probably something that works for them as a coping mechanism of, staying safe or self-soothing when they were really young. When you're really young, your nervous system is still developing, which means when you're going through something like a high stress situation, especially if it's repeated, then that becomes a hardwired response as an adult. Your nervous system physically thinks that that is how it's supposed to act. So that's why when you have to publicly speak, if you had a bad experience with that when you were in 3rd grade and everyone laughed at you, you're going to have a physical response to that. You're going to choke up. You're going to get clammy. You're going to get scared. And these impact the way we interact with people for the rest of our life. It doesn't just impact who we are as a person, as our personality traits, but how does your relationship with people go? Not even just like partnerships, but friendships and with your family. If you learn to shut down, that's going to affect your relationships. If you become, if you have unhealthy attachment styles and you're maybe like overly attached to people, that's not going to be healthy in a relationship. Or if you're avoidant attachment, that's not going to be healthy in a relationship. So all of these things that we learn when we're really young, and then when we think that there are personality traits, they end up affecting our relationships as adults. So that's why when you do the healing work, you feel like a whole new person. When you go through big experiences, you feel like a new person. That's where that phrase that you feel like a new person comes from. Because you kind of are. You're literally physically rewiring your nervous system. And that's why it's so important to do the healing work. It literally changes you. It's not just to make you happier or feel lighter. It literally changes your life. It changes who you are. It makes it easier to navigate your life. It's not fair for you to have to navigate your life feeling some of those things. That scared version of you, that nervous version of you, that attached version of you. You don't need to go through life like that. When I was a kid, it wasn't safe for us to have a voice. My mom constantly criticized us for sharing our opinions. I learned at a very young age that I couldn't say how I was feeling. I learned at a very young age that my opinion was not okay. I learned I couldn't say when something was wrong. Specifically, a time in 3rd grade, I had expressed how I was feeling to my mom. And next thing I know, I was in the guidance counselor's office at school. Like, she embarrassed the hell out of me for it. And I learned that that was not something I could do. I couldn't talk. I couldn't say my opinion. She would call us attention seeking if we, wanted to talk about our feelings, and that we didn't deserve to feel that way and that our feelings were wrong. So as an adult, up until I started healing these things, I wasn't able to properly talk about my feelings. But here's the thing, in my relationships, all I wanted was communication. All I wanted was to have these talks, and all I wanted was an open relationship. But I couldn't talk about my feelings truthfully. And I think a big part of it was I didn't know my feelings truthfully because I wasn't able to talk about them for so long. So my brain was like making things up about how I felt in certain situations, because that's what I thought I was supposed to be feeling. But the truth is, I didn't know how I was feeling because for so long of my life, I wasn't allowed to express how I felt. I wasn't allowed to talk about how I felt. And now picture that. My dad went to prison when I was 5, and I wasn't allowed to talk about how I felt. That does some damage. When this is nervous system work, because a lot of this is nervous system work, it's really important to do physical healing, body healing. And I'm not saying that emotional healing isn't important. It absolutely is, 1000%. But it's also important to work on healing the physical structure. So your nervous system is really important. So doing somatic breath work is really, really beneficial, because these things show up as identity structures in our life. So when you have, let's touch on that anger again. When you have that feeling, anger, if something or someone touches on that emotion, doesn't have to be anger, it could be hurt or sadness, something that's tied to anger, but something lightly touches on that and you feel it, you're feeling it bubble up. And let's say you weren't allowed to express that as a kid. Let's go on that route, okay? You're not allowed to express emotion because it's bad. You get in trouble. You looked down upon. You can't express your emotions. But you start to feel it bubbling up, so you can't. So then your body starts to feel fear because it feels it coming, and it starts to fight it. Your body starts to feel fear because it feels that anger coming. It feels that emotion of hurt, anger, frustration, and it feels it coming up, and it starts to fight it because it's feeling it. And then you shut down. And it's a constant cycle. So the way to break that is when you feel it coming, you have to be consciously aware of it and not do the whole fighting it and pushing it down and blocking it from coming, and allowing it to come in a safe way, of course. I'm not saying go and, go start fights with people, but allowing yourself to safely feel these emotions, however that looks like for you. Everybody's obviously different. And I'm not going to say, oh, get a journal your feelings. I mean, if that works for you, of course, do that. But some people, it's punching a pillow. Go break glass safely, please. Dear God, safely. But do what works for you. If it's sadness, go cry it out. Let that out. God, that's so good for you. So good for you. Crying lets out so much. It is so healthy to cry. So many people aren't able to cry for so long. I even went through a stage where I was not able to cry. After I went through my domestic violence a year and a half ago, I was not able to cry for months because it was such a traumatic event. I was able to cry out of frustration, or if I were to watch a sad movie, but when it came to trauma healing and stuff, I could not cry. It was so annoying. And I was mad because I was I want to release it, but it won't come out. And I can't even tell you when I finally got that ability to cry back, but now I can cry again, which is great. But it's also important to look at your relationship with that emotion. So what is your relationship to whatever this emotion is? Do you fight it? Do you block it? Do you hate it? Or do you jump to it every time? Do you jump straight to anger every time you're feeling a certain way? You get a little bit of frustration and then you jump straight into anger? Or do you feel a little disappointed and you jump straight into sadness? Do you feel a little bit of rejection? You jump straight into sadness? It's important to look at your relationship with these emotions, especially when you separate yourself from them and look at them as something separate from yourself. You are not that emotion. You can feel those emotions, and it's important to feel them, but separate yourself and know that you are not them. Especially when it comes to things like depression, because depression can be so all-consuming for so long. So it's important to look at it as something separate from yourself. I think that's where I'm going to leave it today. I hope you got something out of this. If you did, please let me know down below. Other than that, I will see you in the next one. Bye.